Hi everyone, welcome back to Farrand Film. It's me and Ollie. It's been a while
Dream
since we've,
team.
we've done one of these. It's been a while since I've done anything as well. Actually, I was doing sort of box office stuff over the summer, and then as soon as I started work, that stopped very quickly. Um, so we're gonna do our top 10 composers. Now, we're not gonna do it in the format that we usually would do, where
Mm,
we would sort of do our number 10s and share our number 10s and then do our nines and stuff like that, because we think and we probably know that there's going to be a lot of crossover with this. That there's
yeah.
not many out there that I could argue are my favorites. And just I think through our tastes anyway, there's going to be crossover. So what we're going to do is,
There's not that many famous ones, like
yeah,
where
there's
you
not,
know them as household names, and
yeah,
there's not an awful lot you can say about them anyway. So we need to kind of agree to
and
talk at the
I think
same
it's that
time.
profile as well. I think there's a few like one's
Yeah.
just popped into my head now where I'm like, if I see the name, I would go, oh, I know that they're a good composer, but they're not on my
Yeah.
list. So
Mm,
yeah, but there's more like that. So what we'll do is we'll do our honorable mentions, and then we're
mm,
essentially going to use my list as a bit of a template, and we're going to start at 10, see if there's an agreement, and just
mm.
slowly work our way up, and we'll see where things coexist and where things sort of happen. Um,
Yes.
I don't think this is going to need a second part. I don't think this is a two-part podcast. I get the
Even though
feeling,
it's got me,
yeah, I
Adam's
feel like,
massive audience in India.
I
Sam, you
mean,
can relax.
Sam, this
This
is going to
might
be
be
a walk
just
to
about
work.
over an hour.
This is going to be brisk. I'll listen to it on the tram. It's fine. So, my one and only honorable mention, and I think purely because they're relatively new in terms of full composer ship,
Don't you dare.
if you
Oh,
want.
don't you dare.
No, 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 no.
Okay.
No, but it's purely because um, she has appeared on other albums, but I think playing instruments on other albums.
Mm,
And this is the more recent ones are the ones that she's done. And it's Hilda Daughter, which I believe is the way that you say it. She did the score for Sicario: Day of the Soldado, which is the sequel to Sicario. But
mm.
then, quite famously, and she won an Oscar for it, she did the score for Joker.
Right.
And she's done the score for the sequel for You Do. So her sort of profile is rising at the minute.
Yeah.
I
She
feel
she's definitely like one to watch, isn't
Yeah,
she?
I feel like saying this is very similar to when we did the actors lists, and I said Florence Pugh at like number
Yeah.
9. It's like nowhere near seen the capability of this person yet. So
Mm.
that's one just to mention. You said you've got 3 honorable
I do
mentions.
have three. So I've got Ennio Morricone, like he's a classic, just for the spaghetti western trilogy, the good, the bad, and the ugly, for a few dollars more. Like a lot of that music. It's so much stuff that you don't realize you've heard as
Mm.
well. It gets referenced in other films.
That sort of like
Jerry,
atypical Western sound.
yeah, like he had that down. He's kind of nailed that. Jerry Goldsmith,
Hmm.
looking back as well, because like the number of times me and Alan, me and Adam have
Alan?
just Alan, the number of
Oh,
times me and Ads have just kind of gone in on that very specific moment of music in Mulan where she cuts her hair. Jerry
stunning.
Goldsmith. Also realized researching this, he did Alien as well. So
Wow.
yeah, he's one of those. He was just quietly getting on with stuff for years.
Right.
If you look at his, and Georgia made me realize as well, like the ones that are higher up on my list have more iconic moments. Whereas you don't necessarily watch Alien and go, "Oh, the music's great." The
100%. There was
one
one of mine that
you,
crawled and crawled and crawled up towards the top of my list, and I was like, I can't not because of this, and this.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the one I think you might find the most contentious that I've got it in honorable mentions,
Hmm.
because I can immediately think of two franchises that he's responsible for the music of that you love, Alan Silvestri. So the Back to the Future music, I imagine he's going to appear in your top 10. Back to the Future and the Avengers, like it's unbelievable. I have a more emotional connection with everybody I've got 10
Yeah.
upwards. But Alan Silvestri is objectively an incredible film composer.
Oh,
So
100%. He is on
yeah,
my list. He's quite low down, so we're going to get to him fairly
yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
So it's not one that I'm going to write down on our sort of definitive one yet,
And this
unless you
is the
need like
beauty
a
of
number
this as
10.
well. There's not going to be any hot takes or anything because this is like we love these all, and they're in slightly different orders.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like,
Um, right. So my number 10 is unfortunately a composer who's no longer with us. It was a bit of an untimely passing. This is Johan Johansson,
oh, I've not
whose
got him.
scores include Prisoners, Sicario, and Arrival. So you will notice all Denis Villeneuve films.
Yeah.
I think the score for Prisoners is just so sort of foreboding and subtle, similar to the one for Sicario, but then that score for Arrival that just absolutely bombards every bit of emotion that you've got in any key scene in that film. And I remember hearing that he died, and I was like, oh, that surprised me because he's literally he's working right up until the end.
Mm.
And I'm assuming that he would have stayed on and maybe done Sicario Day of the Soldado, which I've already mentioned, which Hilda Good and the daughter did. So it's a shame that I've had to sort of stick it with one that's unfortunately passed, but I couldn't not put Johan Johansson on there.
Mm.
I'm assuming he's not on yours.
He's not, no, because I've not seen a lot of the early Villeneuve stuff. Like even though I know I'd love it, like Georgia
Yeah.
keeps telling me I need to watch Prisoners.
Oh,
I've heard
Prisoners
nothing but
is
yeah, I've heard
yeah,
nothing but good things about Arrival as
yeah.
well. Like, and
Um,
obviously Denis got a new collaboration, and that's all I've really heard with him these days.
yeah.
But because I thought you were going to go a different direction, but my number 10 is Harry Gregson Williams. And
Okay.
the main thing that jumps out with Harry Gregson Williams is the kind of PS2 era onwards Metal Gear Solid games.
Right.
So that Sons of Liberty theme, the Snake Eater theme, he was responsible for that. He did the Rot, the Borrowers, Ants. He collabed a little bit on Prince of Egypt, although I know that was largely someone else who we are both going to talk about later, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, Chicken Run, he did as well. He's just one of those. He's a very tidy performer. He worked on Shrek, and he's lower down because he hasn't quite got anything, iconic. Like other than for me, that Metal Gear Solid music is quite iconic. And I'm trying to look through now, trying to find something where you'd be like, "Oh my god, he did that," and there isn't quite anything. He did X-Men Origins Wolverine. How about
Okay.
that?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, worked a lot on the Shrek films. Arthur Christmas, which I imagine you still need to watch.
I've seen After Christmas. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you have seen it?
Yeah.
Okay. Did the Equalizer, the Marsh? Like he's just one of those. Really kept going at it throughout. Did the Bad Mulan? Yeah, he's going to do Gladiator 2, weirdly, because
Oh. Okay.
yeah, I don't get why. Because again,
You would assume,
you would assume
yeah,
the guy would just take over again. Maybe he's
yeah,
busy in another project. Hopefully, Dune 3.
probably, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Harry Gregson. He was just a really tidy composer. He's never done anything wrong. And again, that Metal Gear Solid music. I know it's not film, but that just and like
No, it's yeah,
Snake Eater respect. Because I did, consider looking at video game composers, but then just so many Japanese names would be being said, and I wouldn't be able
yeah.
to pronounce any of them. Yeah, Harry Gregson
Um,
Williams.
so my number nine, I think, is probably the last one on my list, which I just don't think that you're gonna have.
Okay.
Purely because they're mainly known for a franchise, and it's a franchise that I love, and it's that sort of key score to that franchise that is the thing that makes everyone go back to it. It's Charlie Clouser, who is responsible for the Saw films. So
Ah,
Hello
okay.
Zep, the da 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 da
To
da
be all right,
da
to be fair, by my criterion, that is immediately, yeah, that's
yeah.
something like that music just
It's just it
it's
works
zeitgeist
so
music, isn't
well.
it?
100%, 100%. And it's that sort of it's one of those things that you get with the franchise where they did a theme for the first film, but then the motif of it gets repeated in all the other films that then come afterwards, and it
Oh, what a
becomes
beautifully
so.
worded way of saying it, ads. If only I can say that about someone later.
Oh, maybe it becomes so intrinsic in everything else that happens.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
I couldn't help but put Charlie Clouser in there, but I knew straight off that he wouldn't be in yours. In a similar vein of Malignant, which was directed by James Wan as well. Joseph Bissara, who has started doing a lot of more contemporary horror soundtracks. He's great too.
Mm.
But yeah, that's my number nine.
I need to see actually if Ari Aster's got like a regular collaborator because I remember the music.
Possibly.
I remember the music in Hereditary just being horrible. I mean, everything about Hereditary was horrifying,
Yeah.
but I do remember the music for that. I think all of mine from now because you kind of had you heard of Harry Gregson Williams before?
I'd not, but every time that you've sort of said something, I've kind of gone, all right, okay, so I
Oh
must
yeah,
have
that.
been
I
familiar
do
with the
feel like
music.
every name from here on in is a big boy name, and people kind of know.
Likewise.
So
Yeah.
I've got a little bit, vanilla, pumpkin spice latte with the rest of my picks. I don't care.
No,
Um,
I get called basic already at the new job for some of the choices that I have, and I said, well, that's just me. I am just a basic white man. I do apologize.
so my number nine, and I thought you were going to say this for your number 10 because you were leading on with this no longer with us, and this man is no longer with us as well. I've gone for James Horner.
Okay.
Is he on your list?
He's not on my list.
There's less crossover than we thought, people.
Close, but no cigar for Horner.
So, for the uninitiated, I'll just read some of his filmography: Braveheart, Avatar, American Tail, The Mask of Zorro, Land Before Time, Aliens, Apollo 3, Balto, The Magnificent Seven, The Rocketeer. He's known for these kind of big, epic, typically American kind of compositions. Jumanji as well, like again, he's not quite in the realm of you can recite the music necessarily. I've got a bit of Land Before Time playing in my head right now, but that's because I watched it a lot as a kid. And like the music in Land Before Time is just indicative of what he does. He kind of has this really nice full repertoire. It sounds very simplistic, but it really gets the job just done.
Yeah, he was
Died
one of
quite
the
young
names
as
that when I
well.
was sort of going through lists, it was like he's one of the key ones, you know.
Yeah. Like Mask of
Um,
Zorro as well, like, because
yeah,
that is low key one of my favorite films ever.
it's a really good film. I mean,
It's just such a good film.
some
And
of
he
this
does,
boils down to like affinity towards the film as well, you know.
yeah,
And I think there are people further up where I'm like that music in that film. Like there's one that just in the pantheon of everything else that he's done, there's one film that sticks out in another one of mine where I'm like, that's my favorite, I think. And it's not the
yeah.
sort of grandiose stuff that they've done. Well, to start the crossover then, so my number eight is Alan Silvestri.
All right.
That
I
goes
get
back
it.
to your honorable mentions. So I think if I was putting him anywhere, I'm going to stick him at number 10 because I feel like we've at least got the smidge of a crossover and
Yeah.
it drops him down my list a little bit. So I mean, I wrote down Back to the Future. He did Predator. He did Who
Oh, he
Framed
did
Roger Rabbit.
Predator. Mm,
He did Ready Player One, which I think has so many things, so many little bits that they've just pulled in from so many different genres. I'm watching that next week, my year nines, my year tens.
mm.
But then it's Infinity War and Endgame. It's Portals. Like I can't not hear Portals and snap my
Yeah.
thighs to it happening, and then just get so excited about it. And like
And
I just
like love or hate Avengers, everybody can do that Avengers theme. In
100%.
the world, everyone in the
Yeah.
world can do that Avengers theme. So
And it's
yes,
like
he
every
does
now and
need to
again
be.
you think, who's going to be the next one to bring along a theme like that? Where how is something so instantly recognizable? Like Harry Potter's
Mm,
one that comes to mind, where it's like you
yeah.
know Harry Potter, you know the theme song to Harry Potter, the theme tune to Harry Potter, and you know the theme tune to the Marvel films, you know the theme tune to Avengers. Like
Mm,
what's going to come next? You know.
yeah.
So that's my number eight. What did you have as your eight?
My number eight has a fairly limited filmography in terms of big films, but his big films have produced some of the most iconic music. So that's why he's low.
Okay.
Based on these three films, I would have him higher, but it's Howard Shaw, literally because of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Howard Shore isn't my number six.
Fair. Like, is it just on the Lord
Um,
of the Rings, or have you got other stuff that
no,
you're
this
looking forward to?
Howard Shore is the person that I was just talking about.
Mm.
So he did Silence of the Lambs,
He did do Silence of the Lambs.
right?
The
Obviously, Lord
problem
of the
is, like,
Rings.
people, that was what Georgia said. It's like, okay, that's cool. Silence of the Lambs is a great film, but you don't remember it for the music. Real, like it's
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
but you don't go to it thinking about the music behind it.
No, of course not. Um, Lord of the Rings, obviously, being the big
Yeah,
one. And again, I think you might have, this might be someone that you were talking about when you text me and you said about you've got films on there that I maybe don't have an affinity to, and maybe I've not got a composer and all that
it
kind of
wasn't
stuff.
him, but
Right,
yeah.
okay. Um, he also did the music for The Departed, which I think,
Did he?
yeah, which is very subtly done because it's got quite a big non-diegetic pop soundtrack to it as well.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Like, it's whoever did like the Bridget Jones one gets
Yeah,
overlooked
it's
because they've got
you
all
end up
these
not
songs
thinking of
throughout
the
it.
score, you think of the soundtrack instead.
Yeah, similar with Guardians as well. That'll have the
Yeah.
same problem.
He did the soundtrack to Spotlight, which is one of my favorite ones because it's so subtle in everything that they're doing. And
Mm,
there's a clip that I use in my teaching still to this day of James Darcy. I think is he called James Darcy? It's not James Darcy. Brian Darcy James.
mm,
Um, he's looking through an Excel spreadsheet on a computer that's set in 2001 or 2002 or whatever it is, and to the score that's done by Howard Shaw, it's stunning and it just works. And it's like, how have you managed to make that mundane task work?
yeah.
But my favorite, the one that I think people overlook, and to me, if I listened to it now, I could just listen to it and it take me right back to this film and childhood. Mrs. Doubtfire.
Did he do Mrs.
He did the music
Doubtfire?
to Mrs.
Oh, of course,
Doubtfire,
yeah, of course
and
he
I
started
feel
doing
like I
that.
can hear it, and I can see the San Francisco house, and I can, yeah, and it's just,
I mean, I mean, you've admitted, but like, obviously for me, it is. I've kind of said it. Like, you hear concerning hobbits, and you are there. You hear the chains, and you're just there in Isengard. You hear that kind of ethereal. The way he got actual Elvish in there, you see the behind the scenes stuff of how he got it going. It's just the music is so intrinsic to Lord of the Rings, and it is one of the things I think I don't like about Rings of Power
I've
is
not
that it
seen any
doesn't.
Rings of Power.
It's it's not bad. I think if you're not that into Lord of the Rings anyway, there's not much point watching it.
Mm.
Um, but me and Georgia have both described it as it doesn't quite feel like the same font as Lord of the. Like for all we don't like The Hobbit, it at least feels like the same font.
Mm.
And a lot of that is it's the same team making it, obviously, but like that is the Middle Earth that a lot of people grew up loving to see. And this one just feels a little bit off, and the costumes are a bit off, and there's good stuff in there. There's some really good performances
Yeah,
and some good storylines, but the music in that is just a bit it's almost a bit like Chat GPT compared to what Howard Shaw was doing.
so it's gone produce a soundtrack to a Lord of the
Yeah, a little
Rings
bit.
spin-off.
Like
Yeah,
it's just that, but every single bit of music, like for the Rohirrim as they're coming down the hill in Return of the King, and Theoden screaming death at the top of his lungs, just scenes. And
yeah,
Howard Shaw makes it like as epic as he could.
yeah. I think I have more of an affinity for that soundtrack through the games as well. In the
The old PS2 one.
Yeah, yeah. Where
Yeah,
it might not have seeped into the actual gameplay, but those cut scenes where they do show you the clip, like they don't make games like that these days anymore, do they? Where
yeah.
you get a scene from the
The
film and
the
then it's
the
like you're now gonna,
FMV. Yeah, it's
yeah,
always with the movie tie-ins, but the FMV straight from the film, and it was always
yeah,
like a really janky quality.
yeah, don't quite work. Right, so I've plumped Howard Shaw on our joint list at number 7, being as he was
Yeah,
my
that makes
6 and
sense.
your 8.
Yeah.
So my 7,
Mm.
actually, have you done your 8?
Yeah, that was Howard Shaw.
Right. Oh yeah, of course it was. So my 7, I don't know if it's going to be on your list. It might be because he's got a Pixar in there. Thomas Newman.
Maybe later.
Okay, okay. Maybe maybe
Maybe
maybe
later.
too low for me. No, I
Maybe
was
later.
I was going through, and mainly the ones that I pulled out were Wall-E, Skyfall,
Hmm.
Saving Mr. Banks,
Hmm.
and 1917. Um, Other ones are probably films that either you just prefer more than I do,
Mm.
or maybe even stuff that I've just not seen.
Mm.
Right, so he's my 7. So where's
Okay.
your 7?
My 7, you're going to have him somewhere. because he's too
Okay.
big a name to not have, is Danny Elfman.
Sugar my
You've not
coffee.
included Danny Elfman, have you?
Sugar my drink. Honest to God. How have I done that?
You've not included Danny
I've
Elfman.
not even got him.
Oh my
How
ads.
has that not even occurred to me? Because I watched The
Adam,
Simpsons
that's
the other day as
bad.
well. How has that not even occurred to me? Oh no. Right, people are gonna have to get shifted down. Hang on.
Right, where's he going?
Hang on. He's gonna shine a light. Um, I'm gonna put him at number 5.
Okay,
Right. I
so
think that
Elfman's
makes
coming in at
sense.
6.
Right. So hang on. Right. So I'm putting Danny Elfman is going to be my number 5. Right. And
Okay.
he's number 6 on yours. So that means that
Yes.
it drops Johansson out. So that's just another honorable mention. Okay.
Okay.
Fine. So Vestry stays at 10 for our joint one. Shaw, I've got at 7. Should we leave him at? Was he your 7?
He was my 8.
Right. Okay. We'll tweak that after. Right. How did I do that?
How have you forgotten Danny Elfman, man?
How did I do that?
Like
So,
we
right,
are literally
Danny
now, we are
is Danny
we're
Elfman your
stuck.
7?
Yeah,
Right, so I'm going to put him at 6 then
no,
in the
because we are
joint one.
stuck. Like we are now firmly into the you can tell who it is by how they sound
Yeah,
territory
how
for me
did I
with
not
Danny
do
Elfman.
that? How have I missed that?
Like everything Tim Burton, everything Henry Selick, the Simpsons theme.
Like, I even like the song that he sings from the Wanted soundtrack. Like, how
Yeah.
have I not even? Oh,
And
Adam.
then you realize
Oh,
he's married to Bridget Fonda, and it's like, what?
what is he?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. He's married to Bridget Fonda.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
just off the top of my head, like the Burton Batman movies.
yeah,
Like, how have I not?
literally, but I didn't even consider Batman. Oh, actually, you might need to go up. Oh, I think I can see you being annoyed with me for
Do you want
putting
to
up.
do you
I'm
want to
going to
do a
keep.
joint? Do you want to do a joint 5 for Elfman?
We'll
Or is that
leave it for
is
now.
right?
It's
Okay,
just
okay.
because the people above him I do love more, but I forgot about Batman, and that does make it more. But
What
ads.
a name to completely miss off.
I know.
Like I watched an episode of The Simpsons the other day, and it came up at the end, and it said theme composed by Danny Elfman, and I remember thinking, oh, I keep forgetting that he's done that. But then no word did it go. You've not put him in your list. Why? Why? Why?
I mean, what else has he done for the uninitiated? Like
Nightmare Before Christmas,
Nightmare
like
Before
Edward
Christmas.
Scissorhands.
Mm.
It's all that plinkety plonk Tim Burton stuff.
He's the
But
only thing I like about the terrible Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
yeah, but it works, doesn't it? Like
Yeah,
there's
no,
a, there's a
no, I love his music. That kind of that is
yeah, yeah.
that show I'm doing right now, and I wish they found a way to work that in there somewhere because they've worked Pure Imagination, they've worked Candyman in,
Yeah.
and I get it. Maybe it's because they've got those they don't get the Burton one, but that kind of horrifying, like the children are about to die
Mm.
music.
Yeah. This is more morbid than you originally thought. Yeah. Um, all right, that's
Oh,
proper flummox my list and flummox
mm,
me. Right, so that's moved Shaw. Howard Shaw down to 7 for me. Thomas
okay.
Newman's at 8 for me. Sylvester's at 9. Right, so my number 6 then. Someone who's similar to Hilda Goodendaughter is in the midst of making their profile, is in the midst of
Right.
making their name. They've been doing scores for around about 10 years. And you can see from the names the name of the films that I'm going to mention that they've got a couple of collaborations on the go. So Fruitvale Station, Creed, Black Panther, Creed 2, and then into Tenet and into Oppenheimer. So
Mm,
Ludwig Göransson. So he's been
yeah.
working with Ryan Coogler. He's doing Ryan Coogler's next film. He's probably going to end up doing Nolan's next film because Villeneuve nabbed Hans Zimmer. It's just the way that it seems to be.
Yeah.
Um, and his scores are so sort of the different from each one in that I feel like a lot of people after Inception tried to do a Zimmer copy and tried to do that sort of blam thing that
Yeah.
everyone was doing. But then with Ludwig Göransson, like I couldn't have said to you it was him doing Tenet because I just assumed it would have been Zimmer, and it
Mm.
surprised me that it wasn't Zimmer. But then I wouldn't have said to you that the same guy who did Tenet is the same guy who did Black Panther. Like the score to
Yeah.
Black Panther with like all the African drums and the indigenous sort of sounds that are coming from it
Mm.
is stunning, and it gets it so right. And again, it's one of these things where when I teach sound, we look at motifs and sound motifs, and I use a clip from Infinity War where the first time you see Guardians, it's a sort of I think it might be a Marvin Gaye song, and you meet and the kids immediately go right, well that's Guardians. And then when you see Captain America, it's quite big and bombastic, and they go right, well that's Captain America. And as
Yeah.
soon as they hear one of those drums from for like Wakanda and T'Challa and all that kind of stuff, yeah, they recognize it straight away, and it works so well. And I think he's got such a promising career, like still to come. I mean,
Yeah.
he's only sort of
Very understated as well. Like I remember
yeah,
the
and like
music just
he won the Oscar for Oppenheimer.
mm.
I don't know if he's won another one before that. But again, the Creed for you to be able to sort of elicit stuff from the old soundtracks, from the old Rocky movies, not even just the Survivor songs, but also the sort of the score that goes back to those films as well. Like
Yeah.
you've done a sterling job. I'm assuming he's not on your list.
He's not. I didn't consider him actually because I kind of forgot. Yeah, I remember clocking his name when I watched Oppenheimer actually and thinking, no, he's really good. But yeah,
Yeah.
although there is a nice parallel for my number six
Okay.
because I've got Hans Zimmer.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Is he a
Um,
lot higher for you?
much higher.
Okay, we'll talk about him later.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like for what it's worth as well. I get it. I'll talk about it more when we get there. I do like he should be up,
Yeah.
but the
Um,
others are just a bit more emotional for me. There's one as well. I don't know if you will have considered because he's a bit of a weird cheat, but I've put him in there.
who?
Well, similar to Elfman, but a bit less egregious. There's someone else I put ahead of him where you'd be like,
Oh,
oh yeah,
further up. Okay.
yeah. I didn't think about putting him on there because he's not that kind of composer a lot of the time, but he is like demonstrably.
Yeah.
But we'll
Yeah.
talk about it.
Um, quite funny that today I was doing music videos with my year 12s, and we did the video Kill the Radio Star video,
Yeah.
and Hans Zimmer's playing the keyboard. Um, so right, so my five is now Danny Elfman. So who's
Right.
your five?
Alan Menken.
See, right, I knew you were going to do Menken. I didn't do Menken,
Mm.
mainly because again, I think it's the affinity thing.
Right, but it's a hell of an affinity
It
for
is, 100%. And when I did look at
peak
it,
Disney. Like,
yeah, I did look at it, and I did think, is this the sort of is this the person who's responsible for all those Disney like again
because I
motifs?
nearly didn't include him if it was just a case of he wrote the songs, because that's not what we're looking at. But the scoring for Little Mermaid, for Aladdin, for Beauty and the Beast, pretty sure he did Rescue Us Down Under as well. Like,
Mm,
and he did the stuff beyond Lion King, which
yeah.
obviously we'll talk about later. But yeah, like the actual score throughout the Disney Renaissance is top tier,
Yeah.
and like people can recite those songs very easily,
Mm,
and they can recite the background music in a lot of those scenes very easily, and that's the stuff that makes me like when people get it that right. That's what makes me excited to like perform in shows and stuff. Like I wouldn't go as far as to have said like Sondheim because I'm not sure. Like other than musical adaptations of the film adaptations of the musicals he did,
yeah.
there's not a lot. Whereas Mencken has like they were made for films first.
Hmm.
So that's the one where I'm like, yeah, I get you not including him. And if you think that's a cheat and Hans Zimmer gets boosted a bit, yeah.
No.
But,
I think ultimately what we're going to end up doing is when we pull together this list, there'll be some that we argue the toss in terms of like. So for me, like I would want Goranson on there at
mhm,
like an 8 because he was
yeah,
my 6 or whatever it is.
yeah,
Um, so I'm now into my top four.
as am I.
Um, I said this to you when we were texting about it. I think I don't think you're going to have my number one,
Mm.
um, which is fine. But we'll need to sort of move
Do
things
you reckon it
around.
will be an Elfman one? Well, no, you said it's a more obscure pick, didn't you?
I think it is slightly more obscure, but it's one of them where it's like you'd go, "Oh yeah, I get it," you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So my number four, I think, is definitely on your list, and is probably I've probably done too low for you. It's Giacchino.
No, he's number three for me.
Oh, is he? Okay, right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
He's
Um,
number three. I mean, talk like he's in. So you mentioned a couple of times now. There's a couple of people who are like in the early stages, seeming to be making their name. It feels like Giacchino is still there, and yet he's still getting these monstrously big gigs,
oh, 100%.
and he's smashing it out of the park every single
I
time.
mean,
Everything he's done for
let's not sort of sugarcoat it or sort of do it down. He is the reason why we're doing this list.
yes,
Like I text you that clip of, was it the Disney Expo or whatever it
yeah,
was, where he played
where they
a little
revealed
bit of
Fantastic
Fantastic
Four.
Four. Yeah,
Yeah, this was the guy they trusted to do vaguely Star Warsy music in the first Star Wars thing that didn't include John Williams in Rogue One, and he smashed it. Like the incredible, like just if you just look at the Pixar films he's done, Incredibles, Ratatouille, Up, Coco, like oh my
yeah.
god, like which Marvel films has he done as well? Because he's definitely done more than
He's done all the Tom Holland Spider-Man,
yeah,
which again, for me,
yeah,
like it's up there, isn't it?
yeah.
Some other ones that he's done. And so you mentioned the Incredibles, and the Pixar films, but I mean, his score for Up,
Mm.
like, come on, you don't get much
Iconic.
better than that.
Inside Out as well.
Inside Out. He did he had a collaboration with J.J. Abrams for a while, so he did Star Trek and he did the Star Trek
Mm.
trilogy. He did Super 8, which is a phenomenal soundtrack and harkens back to a lot of old Spielberg stuff. So then at that point harkens back to somebody who I'm assuming we're going to talk about, in
It
John
was.
Williams. He did Jurassic World, which again, same thing.
Yeah, fine.
He did Jojo Rabbit, and
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I was like, right, really?
like JoJo's theme for Jojo Rabbit is so
Mm.
beautifully done. But
And
then,
I remember like at one point excitedly for the audience this because I'm talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
Adam in third person. I remember messaging Adam very excitedly. I cannot remember what it was I was watching, but I remember very excitedly texting him like, "I'm watching the film." And I'm here, like, and it was one of those I knew nothing about the film. I knew I wanted to watch it, but I didn't know any of the like production stuff. I was like, I'm hearing Giacchino, and I checked and it was Giacchino, and I'm excited because I can now start to hear my boy's motifs like bleeding through. Because when you hear a Giacchino song now, like we're now very much in the pantheon of when you hear it, it's theirs. They've got their signature just all over it.
you know who it is.
Yeah, you
You've
know
got
who
it
it
that
is, and
look. Yeah,
the fact that it feels like he's the first one in a while to really be able to just have the balls and the presence to kind of leave his like signature in the
yeah.
music, and you just know it's him. And
Like
I'm buzzing for him.
even that little clip of Fantastic Four that they released, that along with the aesthetic of the logo and the thing that they put on the screen,
Mm.
to me, like I felt like I was in the Jetsons or something. It was like
Yeah,
it fit straight away.
yeah.
The big one of recent times, the Batman. Like it
Stop! I need a moment.
honestly it like for me, I
It's
love,
two notes, Adam.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
two notes, and
yeah, and yeah,
mm,
but
like genuinely, it feels a bit sacrilegious to compare it to that Danny Elfman one because that became entangled with like the what's it, the animated series.
yeah, but
That is
I
like
mean,
the
I was
sound of
gonna do the
Batman.
same thing because you look at it, right, and you've got, for as much as I love the Dark Knight trilogy, right, that sort of molasses score from Batman Begins that then got carried over to the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight trilogy by Hans Zimmer, yes, is very good, and yes, is a sort of again a motif of those films. But
Yeah.
talking Batman themes, I'd put Giacchino's Batman theme above that.
Oh, way
and
above.
I'd put it just under the Danny Elfman theme because
Yeah.
it did everything that we needed. It was a sort of brooding, is a new Batman. We're sort of playing it from scratch, like because
Mm.
when they did Batfleck, I'm fairly certain it was Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL when it did the one
Yeah,
for,
I think
and
so.
it's like that's
I don't think Batman really got a theme in
you're
any of
still
that.
trying to sort of replicate what came before, whereas this is a
Yeah.
sort of it seems iconic and classic whilst feeling contemporary at the same time, and
Mm.
that's
And you
essentially
talked
what
as
he
well
does.
about like the Riddler's theme and just that slow burn to insanity
Oh,
that
just like everything about the Riddler in that film. Like obviously, like the costume's a little bit jarring or can be. Like
Mm.
Sam Manicherry, when we went to Manchester before after results day, and he wanted to get me some posters from a new classroom. And every sort of Batman one that we came across that had the Riddler on it, he was like, "Oh, you like the Riddler? Why don't you get this one?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do, but it's like a bizarre man in a khaki mask. Like
Mm.
it looks a bit off-putting to be in a
It's the
classroom."
Zodiac. It's the Zodiac killer in
Yeah,
Gotham.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So the aesthetic wise, I'm a bit like I'm glad that Riddler was the main antagonist, but that's a bit weird. But then,
mm,
like audibly wise, perfect,
yeah.
absolutely stunning. Like,
So
and
well.
again, I can't wait to see what he does with the next one. I'm assuming he's not done anything for Penguin TV series because that's coming on
Oh, I've not
Friday.
heard about it actually. That'd be nice if he kind of produced or was involved, even if it
Yeah,
was. Because I can imagine a lot of it. Like I can imagine he was at least consulted in the way that you'd expect Matt Reeves to be consulted
yeah.
about
I
it.
mean, I would imagine that there's going to be at least some sort of sampling,
Yeah.
that's going to take it to that point.
Problem is though, Oz didn't really have his own theme, did he? Like,
No, but maybe that's going to come out of this, and or maybe Oz has a theme that has been produced by Giacchino that's then going to be used in the second Batman film. That then
yeah.
maybe is featured in the TV
And it's
series.
and it's like Danny Elfman doing The Simpsons. It's just like the title theme for
Yeah,
the series, and then someone else comes in and does like the
does
normal
the
score
yeah.
music.
Um,
Okay.
I've put him at 4
Yeah.
because I was umming and ahhing about where we end up, but it might end up being a 3. But
Okay. So my number four is definitely not on your list. I'll say it clear because you're not a big fan of the films he's most famous for because it's the Bond films. It's John Barry.
oh right, okay, right, yeah, fine,
Like I know you're not the biggest fan of the Bond films, so like,
yeah.
but John, like again, what a motif. And unlike a lot of the others, because his career spanned such a giant period, like we're talking about 30 years he was doing the Bond films, like on and on. Like there was the odd one he didn't do because he had another film commitment. Um, but the odd film, like they stand out so much because they just don't sound like it. And then they're not necessarily bad, the ones in the Roger Moore era that he didn't do, but you really hear that transition, like he evolves his music. If you listen to the music in like Goldfinger, because that's where the music really comes out, like the first two films are actually quite quiet with a lot of
Mm.
the score. Um, and it's a lot of like big band stuff and it's very espionage but fine. And then the amount of synth you get when Timothy Dalton's Bond comes along in the 80s and just it makes it feel like it's at the time and he's
So he
so
would have
good.
done on Her Majesty's Secret Service, wouldn't he?
I'm pretty sure he
Because
did.
that's one of the themes that I think I've heard because everyone sort of raves about the
Mm,
music from that one.
yeah,
But again, like, yeah, like I'm not. It's not that I'm not the biggest Bond fan. They're just not films that I've gone back to, and I think
yeah.
that's the thing. It's like it'd be a homework job for me to go back and
I think it's one of those. If it didn't grab you as a kid, you're not going to have a big affinity for it. In the same
yeah,
way, Star Wars. Like I get that. If people that aren't that into Star Wars, it's because they didn't watch it as a kid and they didn't fall in love with it
not
as a
got you at
kid.
the right time. Yeah,
Yeah, like and the Bond film, I think like the modern Bond films have got a few more people in, but it's not the kind of franchise where people are going to go back and watch the old ones necessarily.
yeah.
I started watching them at 5 and got hooked, and they've had a bunch of great composers involved in Bond throughout. You've had like Michael Kamen in there, who could have been in my honorable mentions for stuff like he did License to Kill as the Bond film, but he did Die Hard, he did Lethal Weapon, and you can hear his motifs a mile away.
Mm.
Like he's got that kind of like trill on the strings, like oh, you know it's him.
Yeah.
Um, and you've got who's the guy who collaborates a lot with Luc Besson? He did GoldenEye, and that one's a bit weird.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's one guy who collaborates a lot with Luc Besson. He did Leon the Professional with him. But yeah, John Barry, just because he came up with that Bond theme.
Yeah.
It is one of the most iconic bits of music in the zeitgeist at all.
When we mentioned before about like iconic themes and stuff like that, or straight away it popped into my head of like, John Barry's Bond theme, which
Mm.
is the one piece of music that is frequented in all of them. I was just trying to see. Oh, Eric Serra.
Yeah, Eric Serra. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
he
I'm having a look
sang
at his
the
now.
credit song as well.
Oh,
Can't remember what
okay.
it's called. It's terrible.
All right. Yeah, I mean, he's done some more recent stuff. Like he did Lucy that had Scarlett Johansson in it. But then if you go
Which is a
further
Luc
down,
Besson film, I'm pretty sure.
oh yeah, yeah, of course it is. Bulletproof Monk, is that a Luc Besson film? No, it's not. No. But then Fifth Element, Luc Besson,
Yeah,
Leon, Nikita, yeah. So he's yeah, collaborations aplenty.
yeah.
Right. So my number three, I don't know where this is going to be for you. I don't know if this is your number one. It's John Williams.
Yeah, he's number one.
Okay, okay,
He's
okay.
number one.
Right, I'm not going to argue that at all. Like, again, it was a case of writing films down and
Yeah,
going, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Like you start with Jaws,
yeah.
which again is Durden, but
Two notes again, yeah.
it's iconic outside of cinema now. Like
Yeah,
everyone knows what that means,
yep,
Then you go to Star Wars, which
yep.
you can wax lyrical about, and
All day.
like even the fact that at what 90 years old he came back and did the sequel trilogy as well.
Mm,
Close Encounters,
yep.
um, the
Indiana
Superman theme.
Jones,
As much as I don't
Superman
like,
theme.
yeah, as much as I don't like the Superman film, like
Mm,
Superman theme, yeah, I know what that
yep.
is. Indiana Jones, E.T., Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, yeah. It's not known for it, but like Schindler's List as well.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not known for its soundtrack because you've got that collaboration with Spielberg.
I mentioned Harry Potter before.
Yep.
Harry Potter.
Epic theme.
And then I've purposely left some out here, right? For like affinity ones, right? Terminal and War of the Worlds. Again,
Yeah.
yeah, right. But I like those films, right? For me, banning Back Home from Hook,
Yep.
right? Stunning. Oh, just I see him running up the hill and he's missed his son's
Do you not
baseball
remember
game.
when you did? Do you not remember when you did the quiz
Yes, I
and you
did it. I
played
did it.
that
I did
and
it.
you
Yeah.
could see the smoke pouring out of my ears because it was so ingrained in me, and I was like, "Where do I know this from? It is there,
Like
right
I've got
there."
images in my head. I'm in the
You've not said
90s.
Home Alone, as far
Oh,
as I'm aware.
Home Alone was the last one that I was. Yeah, Home
Like
Alone
Home
was the
Alone,
last
like
one that I was getting to.
again, it's similar to what's not quite as bad, but similar to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm not big on the film. The music is undeniably
Oh,
excellent.
every Christmas that Home
That
Alone theme kicks in.
the
I'm like,
music as
I'm
he's
here.
running from the church to get back home in time for the Wet Bandits.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that kind
so
of
like, yeah,
like,
love
oh,
it.
it's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, he's my
He's
number one
yeah.
because
I mean, I can't fault you for that at all.
like, and it again, this seems like the basic choice of John. Oh, you picked John Williams. I do think, as good as he is, he's underrated because people just have this vision of him of being like, oh, look at me, I'm John Williams, I can do whimsy, right? The music, as Dennis is escaping the compound in Jurassic Park with the incorrectly spelled embryo names. Very tribal, very haunting, a little bit like, oh no, I don't like it. Like the Emperor's theme in Star Wars. That's like because again, everyone's like, oh, he just does loud and big. No, he does
No,
quiet. He
no,
does
no, no, no.
scary. Like he knows how to make you feel anything he wants to.
Yeah,
He is so good at just that's the vibe. Bang, feel things, feel them
it's like
now.
you could say, oh, the theme song to Jaws, the theme song to Jurassic Park, the theme song to E.T., all this kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But no one ever saw it. No one ever goes, John Williams' score for that. No,
Mm.
John Williams' score for that. But it doesn't just end at that that title tune. It's like that sets it up, and that is the
Yeah.
thing that you're going to remember. But then, like you say, like there are so many little bits in Jurassic Park where I would recognize the film if I just heard the song, if I just heard the
Yeah.
sound of it. You know,
And I don't think anybody does that quite as good as John Williams. Like
no,
people who have not seen his films know his music.
yeah,
Everyone seems to know Star Wars. Everyone knows Jaws, like you said. Everyone knows Indiana Jones. Everyone knows Jurassic Park. And these are some of the biggest films ever made.
like if
Like,
you look at that sort of back catalogue, right? I mean, the money he must be raking in from like
oh
the
yeah,
IRS, right? But like he's Star Wars theme is going to be playing in Universal Studios and Disneyland, right?
yeah,
Indiana Jones again will be a Universal Studios thing. Jurassic Park would have been playing at the Buddy exhibition that they had at the Trafford Centre over the summer, right?
yeah,
Harry Potter's going to be playing at Buddy Warner Brothers Studio tour. It's just it's in and he is the
mm,
icon of film composers. And
yeah,
like realistically, like yes, he's my number three. He's my number three purely out of affinity.
yeah.
And I don't sort of joke when I say this. My number one is because I have albums that I listen to as albums, and that's why it's my number one. But we'll
Yeah,
get to that when we get to that. So Williams, I've landed at two because
yeah.
my three, you're one.
So I know your two
Yeah,
is now Hans
my
Zimmer,
two's Hans Zimmer.
and my two is Thomas Newman.
See, right, okay, so right, so that's a big gulf in it, really.
Yeah,
So that's eight to two.
yeah.
When I
And
land him
Hans
at
Zimmer is 2-6.
2 to 6.
So Zimmer is above Thomas Newman in the main rankings. I don't hate that.
Right. So I actually, you know what I'd do then? I'd say that Hans Zimmer would become our number four.
Mm,
Giacchino
is our
is
number
our
three.
number three.
On balance, it looks like Williams is top.
Williams would be number one,
Yeah.
100%. So then at that point, do you then go Giacchino two?
I mean,
Or
we
is
need
that
to see how the rest of the list plays out. I
I
mean,
mean,
well,
I
you've
know
got
the
one
rest of
left,
your
actually.
list.
Yeah, you've
And
got,
so
yeah.
like I'm gonna have to argue mine getting a sort of dumb deal at the bottom.
Well, it's where they like. I think all the combined ones you can just kind of rank them based on their
Yeah.
combined score, and then because I'll be honest, there are very few on there. I am like passionate enough to really, really argue. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
only thing I
yeah.
might argue is like you like so maybe we cut out like Mencken as an example. You probably would have had him on there, but he's not quite in the spirit of things as
Yeah.
good as he is. Do you want to talk Zimmer first or Newman?
We'll talk Zimmer, and then I'll get to my number one. 'Cause, I mean, do you want to say anything about Newman before?
I think. Well, you brought him up. You brought up his Pixar. So, I mean, it's mainly Wall-E is the thing that people will identify with
Yeah.
immediately. His
So what other
collaboration.
stuff for you have I not mentioned?
The main one that I just have ingrained in my head because I remember it sticking out immediately and just falling in love with was Series of Unfortunate Events.
Right. Okay.
And it's just, but it is that same kind of weirdly ethereal, very light strings, somewhat haunting musical style. Like he was the person that really got me into properly looking at composers and thinking. So I think in my heart, he's probably my favorite. So this is my Hunchback shout, if you like, and for me, John
Okay.
Williams is my Beauty and the Beast shout. In
Right.
the I have to put Williams as the best.
Yeah.
He is like for me, he is objectively the best. But in my heart of hearts, I'm going with Thomas Newman. I'm just looking through that. So like he did American Beauty.
Yeah.
The music for that was stunning. You mentioned 1917. Remember the music in Elemental being great. Finding Nemo. as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Finding Nemo, he just had this really soft, understated, beautiful piano. Shawshank, Green Mile as well. He did the music for those. Trying to find any others. Scent of a Woman. I remember not hating the music Inspector, so we'll give him that. You mentioned Saving Mr. Banks as well. It's just like he did Lost Boys. That
Oh
seems
yeah,
very
fair
early
enough.
on in his
Yeah,
career.
yeah, yeah.
I did briefly think about his Uncle Randy, but I was just, no, I can't in good conscience put I can't in good conscience put Randy Newman up there. But
I feel
like,
like that's a whole other thing in it. That's more of a sort of if we did a Disney song
mm,
list, you
yeah,
know.
maybe. But yeah, Thomas Newman, he was the first one where I really noticed like a style of
Mm,
music and I really liked it. Like, I think as well too in Skyfall that music that's playing where Bond is sneaking up on Patrice the assassin in that like glass floor of
yeah.
the skyscraper, and it's just this really and there's a lot of like there's so much ambient music playing. There's a lot of like really high stuff you're not quite discerning, but it's just, and then there's a swell of something underneath it. It's just so much of his music just gives me chills. Define Dancing in Wall-E makes me cry without fail. It is a gorgeous piece of music, and that's what happens when you take Thomas Newman and give him Peter Gabriel to help him. Like, oh,
Yeah, fair enough.
but we do need to pay homage to the Zimmer frame
We do, we do.
because I can imagine you being like you were very good about me putting him in sixth, and I love him, I do. I just think the stuff he gets cited for a lot of the time is a bit meme worthy. A little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, 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 yeah. It is, it is,
You
it
know,
is. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
no,
It's
doesn't move. And I do think as well, you kind of alluded to it. I know you weren't saying this, but like the Dark Knight trilogy music, there's bits of it that are great. Like the Joker stuff is great, but
yeah.
none of the rest of it really moves me that much.
There's the weird thing of, I think it's called Molasses, where it's that sort of like I can't even you recognize it as soon as you did it, but
Yeah.
it's from the Batman Begins soundtrack, but then it's the one that's repeated in the Dark Knight and it's repeated again in the Dark Knight Rises. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then like so you get the high strings and the violins for the Joker stuff. The Bane stuff is much more blarmy and is much more, and I get it
Yeah.
because it's like, but then that sort of like Fire Rises chant stuff that he did, but then like other stuff like Interstellar, I think is one of his best,
That's much better. It's
like
very
top to
simple.
bottom.
Like it's you can play that on the piano with your right hand without even moving it. It's so simple.
Yeah.
Captures the mood perfectly.
Um,
Still not his best.
Inception, I love the Inception soundtrack.
There's bits I like. I like how clever it is because the
Specifically,
Bombs are actually the French song slowed down to a
yeah,
certain beat
yeah, yeah.
again, which is
Um,
clever. Yeah, I like that.
Specifically Mombasa, which is going with the scene that takes place in Mombasa,
Yeah.
which is very good. Um, his score for Blade Runner 2049, like we mentioned over text about Vangelis, but like I feel like that does it better.
Oh,
It's
so good. Like
Benjamin
it took
Wolfish stuff as
Vangelis and
well.
actually evolved it. It was so good.
Yeah.
And
Um,
June.
June,
June.
June Part One and Part Two are fantastic. The little bits that he did in Top Gun Maverick.
Yep.
But just to mention, I know it's an affinity one for us. The Holiday,
The holiday.
right? You've got to get it
Georgia
in
had to
there.
remind me that he did that because I was like, she said, she turned to me and said, I swear Hans Zimmer did the holiday. I was like, nah, there's no way he did the holiday. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. There's no
But
way you did the
you've not
Holiday.
name dropped Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Like some of the most iconic music.
yeah,
Again,
yeah, yeah.
everyone can do that. Da, 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 da. And in the same way, you talked before about Ennio Morricone. It's like, oh, everyone thinks of his music with westerns. Everyone thinks that with any pirates now.
100%.
Any pirates. You've not talked his best film still though.
Okay.
Lion King.
Oh, of course not. That you know why?
Lion King.
It's because it's number one that I've written on my list, but then we've mentioned every other film that I've mentioned as well. So I must
Yeah,
have just
like
yeah.
because I like honestly, and I figured this out as well because you know what my stance on the Lion King has been in the past, and I've realised actually One thing that leaves me a little bit less than red hot on Lion King occasionally are the songs. I do think they stand out as weak compared to the stuff that came before.
Yeah.
Like, there's some great, like, don't get me wrong, Be Prepared, great, love it musically. And I love the music behind it, but it's just, they're not as good as the Menken and Ashman stuff.
No, they're not.
The,
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
the score, oh, that's different gravy. Like,
Shadowlands for me
Shadowlands,
is up there with
honestly,
everything.
the Stampede music
Yeah,
is one of my favorite bits of music ever. That music, as Simba is walking up in slow motion to Roar on a raining Pride Rock, and when you hear that Hans Zimmer's father died
yeah.
around the time they were filming Lion King, so you got all the sad stuff as Mufasa's corpse is shown on screen. Look at it, children, and cry. And like, you know that Hans Zimmer was like using that as a vehicle to help him cope with his grief, and then that triumphant duh, 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 that is
It
incredible.
just yeah. It
Like nothing for me, nothing he has done comes close to that because you can feel the kind of pathos that it had for him
yeah.
personally. Like the way he was writing that for his dad, it's incredible.
The catharsis
Yeah,
of it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, I've bodged a bit of a list together. You're essentially going to have to pick who you want in number seven because I feel like
Okay.
the six that we're equally shared on that fit.
Mm.
Um, my number one, I've stuck at number eight because I feel like I need to get them in somewhere, and
I
that's
think
sort of
if it's got number
warranted.
one, it's probably got enough points to make it in there.
Yeah.
So who is it?
So
You've not said.
right, any guesses you want to try and?
I've run out of composers at this
They
point.
are a name. As soon as I say them, you would go, "All right, okay, I know who they are."
Okay. Uh, Marvel films?
No,
I'm trying to think of stuff that you particularly love that they'd be involved with a
I mean I'll
lot.
just throw this out there right now. I have and would listen to the album of Tron Legacy over and over again, over again, but it's not Daft Punk. Um, just to mention that because I really like that.
I'm drawing a blank. Who is it?
So they started out one of them you know more from being in a band, definitely.
Right. Right.
And then they had a very, very tight collaboration with David Fincher, which went through a lot of his films that I love, starting in 2010, with The
Right.
Social Network and with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and with Gone Girl,
Oh God.
Trent
Nothing.
Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Okay.
Like honestly, right, and this is no word of a lie, right? I have in a bag in our bedroom, which is there, right?
Mm.
I have a CD copy of the Social Network soundtrack. I have the 3-disc version of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo soundtrack. I have the double disc version of Gone Girl, right? Um,
Right.
he's done Patriots Day, which I think is a very underrated film about the Boston Marathon bombing. He did stuff they did stuff for Soul.
I was about to say, I remember
Yeah,
Trent Reznor was involved in Soul. I didn't know Atticus Ross was as well.
but the one this year that just hits so differently is they did the score for Challengers, the Luca Guadagnino film with
Right.
Zendaya and Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor. And watching it, it fully emphasizes that film to everything that it needs to be. But then
Yeah.
again, I feel like a turd saying this, but listening to it in the gym hit
Yeah.
differently because it's so like oomph and get going and da 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 and do all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And
He
then the
did do
one,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem as
yeah, but
well.
I've not seen that, so I didn't.
I
I
would
didn't.
watch it. It's incredible.
Okay,
It's unironically incredible. And I remember the music being a big part of that as well. So I'm more sold on Atticus Ross.
they for me were like after Gone Girl, it was
Mm.
like whatever they do next, keep an eye on,
Do you
and
know what? Based on
some fell away.
what I remember from Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, it really strikes me that that would be the film composer duo to get if you wanted to do like a Silent Hill film,
Oh yeah,
like a
oh
good
yeah,
one,
yeah.
like that kind of oppressive, foreboding atmosphere. Yeah, I could see. Yeah, I could definitely see that working.
It's that sort of. See, I'm not really into electronic music. I'm not into like dance music and stuff like that. But they take it, and obviously it's melodic because like Reznor's background with Nine Inch Nails and stuff, like he knows industrial style music,
Yeah.
and he's bringing that into it, and then he's bringing a little bit of rock into it. Like with the Challenger soundtrack, there's one song which is essentially just called Yeah Times Three, and there's like a voiceover of a girl just going yeah 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 yeah, and it carries on going through it, but it fits everything about it fits,
Mm.
and it just suits everything that they do so well. But the one that I'm really looking forward to them doing is that they're doing the soundtrack to the next Tron film. They're doing Tron Ares,
Yeah, I just saw that on the list, Tron Ares.
which would be amazing and absolutely phenomenal. Like when we said that we were going to do this list, I knew that they were going to be my number one, and I kind of
Okay.
thought, I don't know if they would be on your list, but that's
Mm.
purely because if you were to say to me, or like if you sat in a cafe somewhere having a drink and going, oh, let's talk film composers, they'd be the first ones that I want to talk about. They're
Mm.
the first ones that
Still,
I
yeah,
sort
it's
of
definitely
go,
an interesting pick. I think like Atticus Ross, I've just checked it because I'm not looking at Trent Reznor's Wikipedia because my God, it'll be huge. But Atticus Ross's filmography, yeah, get him on the joint. Because I
yeah.
do remember like the music being a big part of Gone with the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Because
Well, even that the
I've not watched a lot of Fincher because a lot of it just like scares me. Something about the way
like
he makes a film.
I mean, had they been going much longer than they have been, and had Reznor not been spending the '90s in Nine Inch Nails, they would have done the score to seven. Like it's
Yeah,
that sort of grungy aesthetic that they just get
yeah,
right for his films.
vaguely,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um.
vaguely Gotham prequel. So
Yeah.
who did do seven?
Seven.
Music by Howard Shaw did seven.
There you go.
Mm,
Right. So
wow.
the list that I'm looking at then, right? I've got John Williams at number one,
Yeah,
Giacchino at two,
yeah, that seems fair.
which is weird because it ends up putting him higher than we both either had him. But
I think just based, it's almost like I think you've tried it in the past. I'm not sure you've done it now, but it's almost like if you assign like 10 points to number one, nine
yeah,
to
yeah,
two,
yeah,
eight to. If you do it like that, he does come out
probably would have.
second, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
again, like John Williams, if you just average it, should be
Oh,
second, but
easily, easily.
but he's
Yeah.
first. So
Yeah. So Williams at number one, Giacchino at two, Hans Zimmer at three, Thomas Newman at four.
yeah,
Yeah. Howard
Elfman at
Shore at
five.
Howard Shore at five,
Oh, Howard Shore at five. Sorry.
Elfman at six.
Yeah.
I've got no one at
Jesus.
I've got no one at seven.
I'm gonna put out a shout for John Barry just for the Bond theme.
That's absolutely fine because I feel like one of yours needed to get on there because then eight I've got Reznor and Ross.
Mm-hmm.
Um, nine I've got Ludwig Göransson,
Mm.
and then 10 I've got Alan Silvestri purely because it was my nine and an honorable mention for you. Is there anyone that you want to make a case for that you feel
The
like I've
only
just
one
left
would be
off?
James Horner.
Okay.
Like the Zorro films in particular, Land Before Time. Like he's good. I think the problem is Alan Silvestri does have that advantage of he's done a bit of music that everyone knows. I
Right.
don't know if
Well,
James Horner has managed that.
I'm going to be a bit selfish and I'm going to put Reznor and Ross at seven purely because they were my number one.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm going to
I'll take.
put John Barry at eight,
Yeah,
and then let's do Silvestri at nine because at least there was a little bit of a joint, and then
yeah.
do Horner at 10.
You can
We've
get
got
Ludwig on there. I'm not no because it is that toss up between Ludwig and Horner. I think Horner just has more famous films.
you have a joint one. There you go.
Uh,
Horner and Ludwig.
yeah, Ludwig.
Yeah. So number 10, James Horner and Ludwig Göransson. Number nine, Alan Silvestri. Eight, John Barry. Seven, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Six, Danny Elfman. Five, Howard Shaw. Four, Thomas Newman. Three, Hans Zimmer. Two, Michael Giacchino. And one, John Williams.
That's pretty tidy.
Pretty solid, that, isn't it?
Pretty tidy. And it's not even in count. Like you would not get John Williams in to do your horror film. I
No.
accept that.
Yeah.
Like,
I
but
mean, Jaws.
people would probably think you don't get. Yeah, true, but like, yeah, he probably could do it if he had to. But you wouldn't think that about Jerry Goldsmith, and he did Alien, which is one of the best horror films ever. So
Yeah. So you never know, do you? You never know what's
mm.
going to sort of crop up. Um, it was good to do it like that. It was interesting to do it like that.
I think it only works though if you know there's going to be a lot of crossover.
Yeah, because I was going to say we had a sort of long gestating one of doing like a top 10 directors list,
Mm.
but then I don't know how much of that would end up crossing over. No.
I don't know who I'll put on
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, mate, I don't know. Maybe that's one for another time.
Mm.
But Zoom tells me that we've been on this call for an hour and 12 minutes and we spoke for about 10 beforehand. So that means that we're around about an hour on this and we're done.
We
Like,
made it short.
Christ on a cracker. We made it short and we did all
It's a
10.
what? It's a one-parter,
Oh
people.
my God. It means I can go and have my tea before 7 o'clock. Like, um, anything you want to say? Anything you want to throw out there to the good people who are listening?
Thank you, India, assuming we're still massive there.
And South Africa.
And South Africa.
South Africa's popped up now.
All
Um,
right.
and
Rock on.
hello to the new students who are probably going to listen to this because a lot of them told me today, "Oh, I've listened to your podcast." And I was like, "All right, okay, I'm going to record one
Yeah.
when I get
And I'm
home."
sorry to the people who are confused as to who the hell I am. I am actually a teacher. I just don't work with
It
ads.
doesn't slack off, you know,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
at all. Not like we'd all want to. Um, I got my schedule through yesterday. I am for the first time covering Grimfest this year at the AMC in Manchester, which is basically just a horror film festival. So I'm going to be doing, I think it's 5 films on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday for that. And I'm also going to be interviewing the cast and the crew for those films as well. So that's going to be a very busy weekend for me. That's the first weekend of October. So don't be surprised if you don't hear anything podcast wise
Sorry,
from me.
where did that plug come from?
Put it down. Put it. You put that. That isn't a cheap plug. So yes, there you go. But if you don't hear anything between now and then, it's because I'm figuring all that nonsense out that's going to happen. But yeah. So that's been our top 10 composers. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe,
Yeah.
look after each other, and we'll see you next time.